Hello, and welcome to another FHIR for Developers tutorial video. My name is Gino Canessa, and today, before we jump in, I do have 3 notes that I want to make here, and they'll be obviously typed into everything else below. But first, thank you for bearing with me. It's been a little while since my last content post. We've all been sick here in our family. We're all recovering, but please stay safe out there. Wear masks, do social distancing, and hopefully we'll all get through this relatively soon. The second note is that several vendors have reached out to me and said that they do not support dynamic port registration in production. A lot of reasons why, but at the end of the day, support is actually so low that we're considering removing it from the next version of the specification. So it doesn't change anything for what we've done so far. Other than we wouldn't have had to play with all the port 0 requesting internal honor code. But here it's just as easy. You'll just need to pick a specific port going forward when you want to move into production if you're using this style. So you would pick, port 5000, port 3000, port 8086, whatever it is. So again, the idea was that we were going to do this mode, then do something like probably protocol handlers next, and then do some sort of cloud-based approach after that. So it doesn't really change anything here, but just be aware, I'm not going to go through all the things that you would actually need to do to register in OAuth the dynamic port, because it, like I said, might be even removed from the spec in the next release. The third and last note is just because of the time gap, there have been several releases of interesting things. Of particular note to us are .NET 5 and FHIR released the Net API version 2.0. It was actually renamed in that point too. So some different NuGet packages, a few differences in how we set up projects and things like that. Nothing too major, but I will finish out this local port registration type set using version 1.9 from FHIR and using .NET Core 3. Whatever we happen to be using. And then I'll do another setup video before going on to the next mode so that we'll have both in the content archives. So again, if there's any questions or issues or anything, please just let me know. And with that, why don't we jump right in? Okay, so where we left our project, and what we can actually do is go ahead and give it a run on F5 here, just so that we make sure everything's still building, and I can see our blue text scrolling by quickly, and we can see, oh, there we go. It's still bringing up our login page. We'll do that. We will pick a patient. Oops, we will pick a patient, and we will approve it. Code received. You can close this window, and we can see that we got our token, and it's not actually the token that the token's in here, but it's not actually the token. It's the whole response that we got. So that's all working, and what we want to do now is go ahead and use this token. So we have a sample of it. We saved it and checked it in just so that it would be nicely formatted here, and we can see this is a JSON object that has a few things in it. If we want to look at this page here, we can actually just go and see what parameters are here. And so this is what the authorization server returned. And same thing, we're just on the Smart App Launch spec page. And we can see that there's a few parameters: the access token, the token type, the expiration in seconds, scope, ID token, refresh token, and then also if there is a patient in scope, the patient. So that's perfect for what we need, and that explains what all of these fields are. So probably what we want to do is first, let's go ahead and change this here. So we say authorization response because that's a little more accurate. And we want to make sure that we're accurate in everything. So we'll change that first. Now we do need to parse this. I prefer, since we're doing everything here in .NET, we'll use system text JSON. And probably the easiest thing when you're serializing and deserializing is just to add a class to do that. So in this case, what we can do is do something like smart response.cs. That sounds like a reasonable name for our file. And we're definitely going to need system. We're going to need system.text.json, and we're actually going to need serialization here because we're going to do some custom property naming. So we'll want to make sure we're using the same, namespace. We want to make sure we're in the smart local namespace so that we can use this class easily. And we'll just add our smart response class. And class to deserialize smart auth responses. Perfect. So I'm going to have this kind of off screen here, but here's the main things we want. And again, we have an example of it here that we saved earlier. We can say it's the same fields. So there's actually a few additional fields in this version from the test server, and we'll go ahead and use those too because we might as well deserialize them. Obviously, if they're not present, it just wouldn't work. So the first thing, if you're not familiar with system.text.json, if you name things, so over in our example again, I should just leave this open, we could name fields using this same separation style with the underscores, and everything would serialize and deserialize very easily. But these are not very idiomatic for C#. That's not the normal casing that we use. And so what we actually do is, sorry, just hit a key here. What we actually do is add a property name that tells it what the JSON field is, and then can link that back to what we want. So for instance, in our case, we can do a public, Boolean for need patient banner. And if we wanted to do immutable objects, we can just create a separate constructor. In this case, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to make these get and set. And then what we actually do is do a JSON property name, and we'll tell it that this is actually called need patient banner. And so this way, system.text.json knows that this property is actually attached to this element in JSON. So we want to go ahead and just add the rest of these. And this is a little boring, but I want to make sure that I'm coding and displaying everything here. So I might actually try and speed this up in editing. I haven't tried to do that yet. So we'll see if I'm feeling adventurous by the time this is done. But I have the list of these just off screen here, and we just want to go ahead and grab each one. And I can describe them as I go, actually. So the first one is need patient banner. That's just a display thing, again, for Smart Health IT. The test launcher we're using, whether the client should be displaying the EHR banner and things like that. So we're not actually going to use it, but we'll still leave it here. This smart style URL is, again, specific to the launcher that we're playing with, and that's just actually it might have been added to the core spec. I'd have to go back and double check, but it essentially just says where I can grab a CSS file for matching the styling, the CSS on the web page. We're not using a web page, so we'll definitely never use it, but it's always a good exercise to go through and make sure we understand each of these fields. Going down the list, the next one was actually the patient. And so this is if we're launching with a patient scope, that we have that launch patient ID. And again, we talked about that in the smart video specifically, but if there is one, this is where they'll put that patient ID. So again, we want to use the fact that we can rename these things and make sure that we specify there's a patient ID here so that we don't get confused later when we're actually pulling the patient itself. The next field here is token type, and we're going to grab it even though it doesn't actually have any effect right now. and that's because there's only a single token type allowed, and we can see that's bearer. So that'll be the only token that we get, but we'll go ahead and grab the token type just so that we have it in case, again, future, there might be something else approved. After token type was the scope, and actually I can even do this. There we go, so that way I can see in this window what I'm typing as well. And scopes are actually, this is going to be that space delimited set of scopes that we asked for, the ones that came back as granted. In reality, we would probably want to write a more complex setter here that goes and splits them and puts them into a list or a hash set or something like that that we can do, or at least compare these to the ones we actually requested. But for this very simple demo set, we'll just go ahead and grab them and store them away. So we can check them if we want, but yeah, we would definitely want to compare what we asked for and make sure that everything we want was granted. Next set here is this client ID. And this, in this case, this is the client that was registered and requested. In our case, since we're using the test server, we just have a fixed value there. But we'll want to make sure that you check that in production to make sure that there's no mix-up or confusion between different clients. Again, it shouldn't actually happen, but always better to check a few extra things and make sure that we have everything right. So we'll grab the client ID. Let's see. Next one is expires in. So as we were reading in the spec right before, this one, and unfortunately I can't jump between all of them that easily, but expires in is the lifetime in seconds of the token. So that's just saying when it will expire. So same thing, if we're using this in a more complicated application, we'll want to take this and convert it from the number of seconds into a date time so that it's easier to compare against and things like that, depending on what our architecture will look like. So we'll get into more complicated ones when we start using these pieces to build other things in a future video. But for now, we'll just grab it. So expires in seconds, we'll say. So again, we want to make sure that we're using the fact that we can change these names and make it easier for us as a developer to work with these things. After that are the ones that we are truly interested in, the ID token and then the access token. So again, these are all explained here. So again, also you want to pay attention to what's required, recommended, or optional here for how much you want to depend on them in your code. But in our case, like I said, we're just deserializing all this right now, and so we'll grab these. But we'll grab the ID token and the access token. You can see we didn't even get a refresh token because we didn't ask for one. So we'll probably add that field even though our example doesn't have it. But in this case, the access token, that is required to be here. And then the ID token is just other details. So we'll grab the ID token. As we said, the next one, we're going to grab the access token. And this is the most important thing from this whole set that we want, because this is what we're going to use when we actually ask for FHIR resources and things. This token is what we're going to have to use for that. And then we will add the refresh token so that when we, in the future, use this class, we have this available even though we didn't ask for it, so we didn't get it here. Okay, and then that's the refresh token is what you need to use when we pass this expiration time. Instead of re-authenticating, we can go and change, just like we exchanged our initial token to get this token, the access token, we can go and exchange the refresh token for another new access token so that we can continue work operating. And there's, in the spec, it all specifies what types of things you can expect when you have it, how long it'll last, and some of those things are implementation dependent. So with that, we have our class that we can use. And so if we switch back here, and I can close this now so we can grab it. And at the top here, let's see if we're using these yet. We are not. So same thing, we're going to add our system.text.json here. And the serialization here. Perfect. So now that we have our response, we want to go ahead and say something like, we can use a smart response, and we'll have to do something better with this in a moment, but for now we can just grab it here, and we want to say JSON serializer.deserialize. So we're going to go ahead and ask it to deserialize into a smart response our JSON. And again, definitely in production you'll want this with error handling and testing different things. But for us, this should work well enough. So from here, we'll actually put a breakpoint and run and make sure that we have everything correct. And it's looking pretty good so far. And it actually came here. It's asking me to log in. We'll go ahead and select a patient. We'll hit approve. Code received. You can close this window. And then you can see here we got our authorization response. And now we've parsed this smart response. Well, not yet. Now we have parsed this smart response. And so if we actually look over in the debugger window, it might be a little easier. And we can see our smart response object. Let's go ahead and shrink some of these other things so we can see a little better. And we can see we did successfully parse that JSON into all these different properties that we have. And you can see, as we mentioned, we didn't ask for a refresh token. So you can see that value just got left off. Perfect. So that is good news that that is working. But then we need to actually do something with this token. So in this case, why don't we have a better place to put these? FHIR utils. If I get smart URLs, it's not really. For now, we'll just leave it in program, and we can always refactor later and move it out. So we want to do something with token. So we won't, that way we don't have to, since we haven't decided what we're doing with it yet, we can go ahead and just do something like this. In this case, why don't we do smart response. So that way we are getting this token here. So use a smart token with the FHIR.net API. So we're going to need, first we can just check if smart response is null. We can just say something like, actually we can throw an exception here. We'll say throw new argument null exception and then name of smart response. So this way we'll say, if you're trying to call this and we don't have a token, this is definitely not going to work, and we want to go ahead and throw an exception. We can actually go one step further if we want to and say if check for string.isNull or empty smart response dot access token. And if we have that, same thing. We want to throw on a new argument null exception. And in this case, I don't think we can give it the inner one directly. So we'll just do something like access smart access token is required. And we can throw that exception as well. So at least that way, by the time we get here, we know that we have a valid smart response object and we do have an access token. We don't know if it's valid or not in this case, but we'll find out when we try to use it. Excuse me. So the next thing we're going to need is a FHIR client. So let's see, where's that? REST FHIR clients, and we'll call this a FHIR client. And we can just make a FHIR client with, we don't have the FHIR server URL yet. So we'll leave that here for a second and go ahead and add a private static string FHIR server URL. And again, some of these things we're just throwing up here because in the name of doing the video here, we don't want it to be 8 hours long while we go out and make a nice configuration class that accesses these things and injects the things we need or passes them around. So some of these types of things I am taking small shortcuts on. I do try to call them out as I do it so that you know that's what I'm doing. But we'll just grab the FHIR server URL from here, and then we can come down and use it here. Now, again, this is one of the things that's changed a decent amount between the 1.9 version and the 2.0. So I'll do it here in the 1.9 version, and then we'll do it in the 2.0 model in the next group of these videos. So whichever version you're using in production. So in this case, what we need to do is do on before request. And we're going to add a new handler to that. And it takes in a sender, and it takes in, I can never remember this off the top of my head. This is something called like before hl7.fhir.rest.before, there we go. And we can just call that E per normal conventions. And we'll go ahead and add our request handler. And so what this is doing is just saying there's going to be an event before the FHIR client actually makes a request, and that's going to call this handler here. And really all we're going to do is go to the request headers, and we're going to go ahead and add an authorization header. And we need to do the standard format, which is bearer space, and then we can use our smart response .access token. So we're just going to say anytime you're going to send a request using this FHIR client that we just created, let's add this authorization header. So that should do everything we need, but we need to test it with something. Now in this case, we know that we're always asking for a patient scope because that's what we've set up. And again, since this is a test server, we know that we're pretty much guaranteed to get one. Actually, you can cancel out and then it won't, but for now we're going to assume we do. And so what we're actually going to do is just say, let's grab that patient information. So we'll say, let's grab me a patient. And to do that, we're going to read an HL7, and you can add the using at the top. I find that there's a few conflicts with some other things, and so my preference is actually to move this out into another file, as we've talked about before. But again, we're not going to worry about it for this very simple test here that we want to run. Now, if we remember, it's going to ask us, it's going to try and do a read, and we're telling it the model we're going to use, but we do need to give it the ID. And for FHIR, remember these are, first is the resource type, then is the actual ID. So in this case, there's a smart response .patient ID that we know we've grabbed. And we can go ahead and say, just so that we know we read it, read patients, and we can do patient .name what do we, I think we've, we did this in another video. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just grab that from here. There we go. Read patient, patient name 0 to string. Perfect. So that'll do the conversion for us. So let's try and run. Let's see what happens. Let's see, this part is all pretty standard so far at this point. We can see it's saying it's got everything ready. In this case, it's saying we're logging in as a practitioner and we're picking a patient. We're going to approve everything. It says that it got a code. We can see that we have the authorization response, but, and I already know what we did wrong, is we never actually called our function, 0 references. Editor's pretty handy for that these days. So in this case, since we don't know how long this is going to take and everything else, and this is a async here that we're doing, what we'll actually do is do the same thing. So we'll do task.run, and then we'll just create a task that does do something with token and our smart response. And that way it can run and go through. So if we run it this time, we can see here, we're going to log in. We're going to select our patient and approve it. We get our token, and now we can see it did read back that same patient that we selected. Perfect. So from here, it's really just a matter of going through and, you can see our program's still running just before we finish that. And that's because we didn't tell it ever to exit. We started our web server and everything else, and then we never asked for it to exit. And really what we could do is say, once we have our authorization request completed, we could stop the web server, and that way it wouldn't keep running after this. But again, I think that's a little bit more than we want to go into today. So from here, it's really just a matter of saying, use this token and do whatever it is your application's trying to do. So in this case, we asked for the patient, and we asked for a patient star scope in our original request. And so you can see we can read this patient. We could, in theory, write back to it, things like that. Overall, again, as I was mentioning earlier, it would be a good idea to check the requested scopes against the granted scopes, but I'm looking at the time on this video, and so I don't know that we'll get to that today. So actually with that, I think we're actually at a pretty good spot to end this set. So again, if you have any questions or comments, please reach out. All the relevant links are included below, and thanks for watching. Cheers.